Hey guys, it's Ashley. Listen, have you joined our Bringing Up Baby community yet? It's free, it's for everybody, and it's where we put a lot of our extras from the podcast. Some handouts, some anything we refer to, extra coupons, all the things. But not only that, it is also a place where we can stay connected and continue to learn and grow and connect with each other outside of our weekly meetups that we do here on the podcast. So I hope you'll join us. You can find us at birthbabysleep.ca/community and hope to see you there. Hi, I'm Ashley Cooley, a birth, baby, and sleep specialist and mom of 3. There's so much information out there, right? This show is dedicated to helping you clear out the noise so you can figure out what will work best for your baby and your family. If you're looking to learn more about your baby, gain more confidence in your parenting, and get as much sleep as you can through it all, you've come to the right place. Bringing Up Baby is about to get a little easier. Hey everybody, welcome back. So today's episode, I'm talking to Kaitlyn Sobey. She's a manual osteopath. She works out of Cornerstone Naturopathic here in Halifax. And I just love her balanced approach. She really focuses on holistic care and, her experiences span from helping people nurture their digestive system to managing concussion symptoms, the whole gamut. But today we are talking about her work with specifically babies, particularly those under 6 months of age. But not only are we going to learn in this episode about osteopathy and what it can do to help and what maybe an appointment looks like, but if you're wondering how this could even be helpful for you or your baby, you may not even know yet or realize, but osteopathy can help with things like reflux, gas, colic, breastfeeding, other feeding issues, and so much more. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Kaitlyn to describe more about her practice and what she does to help folks, particularly, again, babies and even those who are pregnant. And I hope you'll get something out of this. So enjoy. Hi, Kaitlyn. Nice to see you. How are
Hi,
you?
Ashley. I'm really well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm really excited we're getting to chat for the podcast because I don't know about anybody else out there, but having come from a small town, learning about osteopathy and what it can do was such a brand new, that was just not something that anyone ever in my town knew about. I It feels like a new thing, but it probably isn't. So I would really love to start with just a basic chat about what is osteopathy.
Yeah, of course. And so osteopathy is a form of manual therapy. So other forms that people are more familiar with would be a chiropractor, registered massage therapist, physiotherapist, occupational therapist. So an osteopath will use gentle muscle techniques, which are called myofascial techniques. So that's usually the really gentle stuff. We mobilize joints, so we help joints move better, and then we use muscle energy work to basically release any restrictions through the patient's body. And then what can be considered unique to osteopathy is that an osteopath looks for the root of the problem. So they're not only just treating the symptom, which usually shows up as pain, but they're saying, why did this happen? Where is this pain coming from? So it's really like traveling up a stream to find
Mm,
out the root cause.
okay, very interesting. So like I said, where I wasn't familiar with it. When I started in this business and working with those who are pregnant and those with young families and little babies and children and trying to find other avenues, or knowing that for instance, sleep consulting, that I actually like to screen for other potential health issues or something that another professional might be able to help with. So over the years, I have been referring people to people like yourself, osteopaths,
Wonderful. Thank you.
chiropractors, for that manual therapy, because I have learned so much of what it can help. So let's share that with everybody, shall we? Why would somebody who's given birth, or perhaps maybe their little child or baby, why would seeing an osteopath potentially be helpful?
Okay, so I'm just going to use the nouns mom and mother to
Okay,
reference the individual who has given birth and
sure.
the individual who may or may not be breastfeeding. Not all females identify as mom, and not all mothers have given birth. Ideally, osteopathic care is part of the mother's prenatal care. When this is the case, osteopathic treatment relieves a lot of the common complaints: heartburn, low back pain, round ligament pain. And then if a mom is continuing through the entire 9 months of pregnancy, usually sometime in the last trimester, her osteopath is going to start to focus on more specifically her pelvic and lumbar spine mobility in preparation for childbirth.
Okay.
um, so whether or not a mom has received osteopathic treatment during pregnancy, so a lot of times I see moms, they're bringing in their baby. They haven't gotten treatments themselves. They haven't received a treatment themselves, prenatal or postpartum. But it's a really great idea to book in for treatment within 6 to 8 weeks after giving birth.
For
Like we could,
mom, for the birthing
for mom,
person.
for mom,
Okay.
yeah, for the
Okay.
birthing person.
And
So
can I put a pin in something? I
yeah,
want to
of
just
course.
rewind already. Heartburn.
Yeah.
Osteopathy can help with heartburn. Tell me more.
Yeah. So a lot of my adult clients, pregnant or not, come to my clinic with combination of menstrual pain, gut dysbiosis. So, we're looking at constipation, diarrhea, bloating, heartburn, diagnosis of GERD. So osteopathy can really help with these symptoms. And then specifically for a pregnant person, it's a little different because there's also a conversation of all the digestive organs being compressed, obviously,
Ah.
by the growing baby, right? So everything's being pushed up. But
Mm.
osteopathically, we're really helping with drainage, fluidic drainage, and circulation, and then the which helps the actual functioning of the organs themselves. So it can help with heartburn.
Ah, amazing. You were just mentioning that those who are pregnant or having a baby,
Right.
that about 6 to 8 weeks or so to check in with an osteopath, and around
Yeah.
certain things around like the mobility after having a baby or other
Yeah,
issues.
a lot of times, and like we can have an entire conversation which would be specifically about birth trauma, which we don't have time to go into today. So that's a whole other concern of
Okay.
mine. And there's a really beautifully written book called Why Birth Trauma Matters
Hmm.
by Emma Svanberg. So
Okay.
that said, most often a mom is going to benefit from a treatment within a couple months. I think to ask a new mom, whether it's her first or not, to come in before 6 weeks, I think that's a little unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a mom
Mm-hmm.
as well. I do remember what that was like those first couple months. But you can work on, usually probably there's some amount of work to be done on the pelvis. A lot of time there's upper cervical work, right? Like the majority of people who give birth in a hospital, they're pushing. If their feet are in stirrups, they're pushing like this, and there's so much muscular tension at the
Right.
base of the head or the upper cervicals. So there's a lot of times work can be done up there
Oh my gosh, you
to
don't even
help
think
mom.
of that. Yeah,
No,
because we do when we're pushing, whether we're doing it the quote unquote correct way or
yeah.
whatever working, that we can have more of that tension in other parts of our body. I didn't even really think of that. That
Yeah,
makes a good point.
and I treat a lot of women. My practice is primarily women and children, more and more consisting of pediatrics. Um, but I treat a lot of women who said, ever since I had kids, whether their kid is a month old or 18 years old, ever since giving birth, I've had migraines, I've had really heavy periods, I've had diarrhea, I've had bloating. And so that's something that the earlier we treat it, the better, both
Hmm.
for consistency of like for the individual healing and also for their quality of life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's really interesting about the mom or the parent, the birthing person, and like you said, maybe we will do another episode on sort
Yeah,
of more
I would love
specifically
that.
for that. But I'd love to talk more about the little ones, the babies, the
Yeah.
children. What kinds of things are parents coming in to get treated when it comes to their little ones?
So for a lot of, like I mentioned before, my practice is women and children. More and more, I have a pediatric patient base, which I consider under 18. I do consider high school kids. I treat them as pediatrics, and then, but of that under 18 group, it's primarily I'm treating babies aged 0 to 6 months. I'm going to say
Okay, all right.
maybe up to 8 months, but that's definitely the primary. So, I mean, I would love to see a newborn within the first 3 to 4 weeks of life on this side.
Okay. Just for a
Unless
general check
basically,
or
yeah, for a check-in,
okay.
unless there was an extreme difficulty during birth, and then I'd like to see them earlier. Um, So I'm a breastfeeding counselor, which is different than a lactation consultant. But in the first appointment and sometimes subsequent appointments, I do an assessment of latch, whether baby's on the breast or on a bottle. Latch does matter.
Okay.
Um,
So for
and
the
then that,
baby, sorry, can I expand on
yeah,
that? So
yeah, please do.
I can see how when we're breastfeeding and sometimes the way we hold our babies or the way we think we need to hold them because there might be tension or something like that, probably
Yeah.
right. But I'm curious about the bottle too. I guess the same way because we're holding them in a particular way. What might somebody notice with latching with a
And
bottle?
equal to how you're physically holding the baby, which can make a big difference for everybody's comfort. Um, but also whether it's a breast, like a human nipple or a silicone nipple, what I'm looking at, does the baby have a seal around its mouth on the nipple?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's not air coming in on the sides.
Mm-hmm.
How's the baby suck swallow? So babies, it actually takes a lot of work for them. They move their tongue differently on the breast than on the bottle, but they're still moving their tongue
Mm-hmm.
to massage let's just talk about breast, to massage the nipple, to
Mm-hmm.
stimulate the milk. And then there's a suck, swallow. So they need to be able to move their tongue, suck and swallow all at the same time. And a lot of time breastfeeding troubles or difficulties come from that with the baby.
Okay.
It's about so much more than how you're holding the baby, what your milk supply is. Like it's more complex.
Yeah, of
And so some
course.
some babies have difficulty with the suck swallow
Yeah.
and
No.
maintaining a latch.
Right. So you're
So
not
when they're
necessarily
popping, yeah, they're popping off the breast or the bottle. They're coming off it because they're not able to maintain the suction. They're not
mm,
able to maintain the seal of their
mhm,
mouth around
mhm,
the nipple. And
mhm,
then I'm getting a baby in my office who is super colicky because they have a
mm.
belly full of air because they keep sucking in air as they're eating.
Okay. So even if a parent isn't coming in with like that primary reason of being a feeding issue, that is
Mhm.
something that you're still doing because it could just tell a lot about I guess what they're potentially going through.
Yeah, and so every baby during treatment, they cry, they spit up, they need to eat, and they fill their diaper. Like that's a guaranteed is going to happen in the
Okay.
45 minutes that I see them. So,
Okay.
I'm not necessarily when mom comes in, I'm not saying put the baby on your breast and let me see.
Right.
Usually
Okay.
it's something that just happens organically. I go with the flow. I
Okay.
ask them about the latch, but if baby isn't ready to eat, baby's not ready to eat, and
Right.
they'll show it eventually.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. Okay, so interesting. So that's one of the things that you're doing, and really, this is one of my other questions. Like, what does treatment look like? So one of the things
Yeah,
is observing a feeding. What are
observing a feeding, and then
yeah.
if I'm seeing anything that is indicative, maybe a tongue or a lip or cheek tie, then that's when I'm going to refer to a lactation consultant who are just absolutely skilled
Mm,
professionals. They're truly
mm,
truly a gift.
mm-hmm.
um, yeah, so I assess baby's latch, and then there's some breastfeeding or bottle feeding education happens. um, yeah, I would say the most common complaint I see in my office with newborns is gas or reflux, or maybe it's been diagnosed, excuse me, as colic, which is stressful for parents. And
Yeah.
then also, good to remember that colic is basically a green light from a primary care practitioner. So they're saying there's nothing else wrong with the baby. The baby's healthy, otherwise healthy. So then I think, great,
Mm,
this is where I can work. Um,
I love that because I think that can be I know personally some people who were so worried about the crying of their little one in the early days and going to the hospital because you're like, gosh, there must be something
yeah.
going on. And then maybe some tests, maybe just some observations and coming home with like nothing, colic or, nothing seems to be a health issue. But then you're just like, oh, okay, so we just deal with it
Like
then?
what
Like, what
what
else is there to
now? my
do?
my baby's
Exactly.
miserable. Yeah, and it's really stressful for parents and
Yeah.
for moms and dads and anyone else in the home. So otherwise, aside from the feeding issue, or I should say in addition to the feeding issue, I'm checking babies' physical development, and specifically the development of their musculature, or how I look at it is at their stability. So
Mm,
you and I, everybody, babies included, we have a relationship with the ground. So whether or not we think about it, we
mhm.
do have a relationship with the ground. Thank you to gravity.
Yes.
And so then the baby's relationship to ground exists in two positions, excuse me. So in supine, which is laying on their back,
Okay.
or in prone, which is laying on their belly. So also called tummy time, but
Right.
not to get into tummy time, but they're laying on their belly or they're laying on their back. And that's the relationship with the ground. And then, so what they're working on is to be stable in this position, stable in supine,
Mm-hmm.
and stable in prone, because eventually, even though it doesn't feel like it when they're newborns, they're going to lift themselves off the ground, stand up, and walk.
Right.
So
right.
that's their relationship of the ground, is how do I become stable enough to lift myself off the ground?
Okay.
Which is not conscious thought, obviously.
No. And over time that's what's coming. But
yeah. And that's so really what I'm looking at is I'm asking myself, is this baby stable relative to their age in supine and in prone, or on their back and on their belly?
Okay. So what if they're not? What if you notice some? Yeah. What does that look like?
Yeah. So if a baby, by 9 weeks old, so a solid 2 months, if a baby by 9 weeks old, and they're not tracking their eyes. So when they're laying on their back and they're looking at you over them, so their face is to the ceiling, but you're there. And if you move, if mom or dad or whoever moves 30 degrees to the right and 30 degrees to the left, I want to see that the baby is following with just the eyes.
Oh. Ooh.
So just 30 degrees. And it's not going to happen like if your baby's 7 weeks or if your baby's just 2 months, you're probably not going to see it.
Okay.
But so we want to see them just with their eyes. So where babies begin with their stability is their grasping reflex in their hand and their sucking reflex in their mouth. So that's what's stable when they're brand new. So by 9 weeks, I really want to see the eyes tracking 30 degrees without the head moving.
And what does it mean if the head is moving? I would have thought that you want the head to move because then there might be tension, but
but just the 30 degrees.
Oh,
so what it means is that their body on their back, their body in supine is stable enough or is relaxed enough. You could say,
that they only have to look.
That they only have to look. They don't have to compensate for that movement by moving something else.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, and then another one I'd like to see by 9 weeks, let's say, is they're bringing their fingers together into midline, so into the center of their body. They're going to start bringing their fingers together. You're going to see this at 8 or 9 weeks, but only just. So it's like if they're happy, if it's playtime, if you had a cuddle and they're alert and just had a bath or whatever, they're happy. So I don't see that in my office with a 2-month-old baby or 9-week-old baby, and that's not concerning to me. I say to mom, it's usually mom who brings baby in. I say to mom, are you seeing this? And sometimes she says, I don't know. Because it's just emerging and they maybe wouldn't notice. So I say, okay, just watch for that and let me know when you guys come back if this is what you're seeing.
Okay.
And then we're going to say by 3 months or 3.5 months, like into the 4th month, I want to see their hips and knees and feet at 90-degree flexion. So again, this is a baby on their back. So they're bringing their hip up, their knee up, and their foot up.
Okay.
So they're not holding their foot. They're not in happy baby. They're holding their legs 90-degree flexion at the hip and 90-degree flexion, that means bent, at the knee. And they can hold it there.
Okay. So if they're not doing those things, then you have some treatments, some protocols, some strategies to help them get to that point, I assume. Yeah. Okay, cool.
And then another thing in the 4th month too is we're starting to see clumsy grasp. So they're gonna hold their hands briefly. They're gonna reach for things, like reach to grab it and hold. They'll drop it, but they're having like a clumsy grasp.
Okay, that's what you want to see. I
want to see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's on their back. Then there's a whole thing on their belly too.
Looking for the best for your baby? Atlantic Canada's Baby Store is here for you. Nurtured, which is right here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, has the best products for baby. The staff are so incredibly helpful, and they have the most top-rated car seats and strollers you won't find anywhere else. So whether you need expert advice or the perfect baby gear, Nurtured's got you covered. And guess what? Nurtured's giving Bringing Up Baby podcast listeners an exclusive deal. Get 15% off your order from nurtured.ca when you spend a minimum of $75 using code BUB, B-U-B. Brand exclusions apply, valid now through till November 30th, 2024. Nurtured, supporting your parenting journey every step of the way. What are some of those things that you're looking for? Because when parents are doing tummy time, which they are hopefully doing at least a little bit sprinkled in the day, what are some things that we're noticing there that they progress through?
So, and then tummy time is like a lot of parents come in, especially first time parents come in and say, oh my gosh, my baby
they don't like
hates
it.
Tummy. They hate tummy time. I think, because their head's so heavy. They can't hold it up. It's like, it's a lot of work, but they do eventually like tummy time once they're a little stronger. So, so on their belly by 9 weeks, I want to see the elbows are in contact with the ground.
Okay.
Versus like a Superman. Arms
right, where they go and like, yeah.
And it's like they're swimming. You'll see that in older babies a little bit, but at 9 weeks or solid 2 months, we want to see in tummy time their elbows on the ground. Their elbow is going to be tucked down pretty close to their body, like underneath the shoulder, or lower than the shoulder. Okay. It's going to be tucked down, but I want to see it on the ground.
Not lifting yet, but at least on the ground.
Not really. I mean, like they're not lifting much at 2 months.
Yeah.
And then, so versus like arms up in the air. So
like you're jumping out of an airplane.
like baby up like this.
Right.
And then, so into the 4th month again, so then this is like a few weeks older. I want to see now the baby has brought their elbows, they've like lifted their arms. We're still talking about on your belly. They've lifted their arms and their arms are out in front a little bit, still bent elbows, but they're what's in contact with their arm is it's called the medial epicondyle. So it's that tiny little bone that's inside your elbow.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So we want that to be in contact with the ground. And then that's when they actually usually start to enjoy tummy time more. Because now they're really stable. It's like a tripod.
Yeah.
Now they're like, okay, I can look up. They're starting to reach for things. They're curious about toys. And then they start to really enjoy tummy time more.
Right.
For short periods.
Yeah. I mean, every kid's different with that one. That's for true. Sure. Okay. So it sounds like there's kind of quite a bit around making sure there's not tension or things that are preventing them from doing those sorts of things. Right. And then you can help to release that or whatever. I might not be saying the right terms, but that's how I imagine it. Okay. I can remember sometimes because you've been so lovely to come to like some of our drop-ins at times and meet some parents and their babies. And I know people do that and they come to your appointments with you. Some other things that I've noticed in my own kids or friends have noticed, or I know that people have reached out to you for, what we talked about reflux or not necessarily reflux, but the gas colic, I feel like that all kind of coincides when it comes to this. What about when we see, because every once in a while I see some babies with their toes crossed and they kind of hang out like that. Is that something that you see and what's going on there?
It's something that I see, and it's actually something that often will resolve itself. Okay. Like I'm going to check to make sure, probably with a baby, just because their little muscles aren't developed. So if that was an adult, I'd be looking at probably calf, Achilles, maybe even into the low back. But for a baby, if they're really little, a couple months old, like a newborn, I'm probably going to just check the cranial base. So the base of their skull, where the skull meets the spine, where the skull sits on the spine, is the cranial base in the upper cervical. So I'm going to probably check there. That kind of gets squished a lot of times or compressed. In utero during birth, I don't know. They came
makes sense.
They come out like that. Sometimes I don't know why, they just do, I guess. So, but the toes crossed is often something that will resolve itself, as well as curled toes. Sometimes babies have curled toes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So,
I'm going to check to be extra safe. Obviously, I'm going to check to see that the tibia, so the shin bone, is in line, like there's a proper alignment, foot to shin to knee to femur into the hip.
Okay.
But more,
a lot of times you notice that it kind of goes away on its own.
A lot of time it does go away on its own. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What about when babies are arching their back? Now, I know that that is one of their cues to be like, I don't want to do whatever it is you're trying to do to me right now. But what if it just seems random? Like they're laying on the floor and then they may arch their back, or you're just sitting with them and they seem calm otherwise, so they're not like getting fussy or upset, but they kind of start you notice some tension. Is that something that you
Right. So
see
I
much?
mean that yes, the short answer is yes. I see that. And then it's like, well, are they arching their back when you're putting them in their car seat or
Right.
then that happens.
Yeah, yeah. They don't wanna
Um
go.
they don't want to go. Sometimes with, you're not going to see it at 9 weeks, but if you have a little bit of an older baby, they're going to arch their back, laying on their back. They're going to get their foot, they bend their knee and get their foot on the ground because they're starting to try to roll
Right,
eventually, right?
right.
If it's a young baby, and so I guess young baby, let's say less than 3 months, and you're holding them and they're arching their back, are they happy? Are they uncomfortable? Are they crying? Are they upset? Assuming mom goes through, do they need to burp? Do they have a clean diaper? Are they hungry? It
Mm.
might be that they have a little bit of cramping for gas. That
Mhm.
can happen. Like I would say
Like they're
more it's
trying to
the
make space or something that's
yeah, or
like
it's
a
like, my belly hurts, if you have like some air or gas in your belly, it's like, ow, and they're trying to squirm around because they're uncomfortable.
okay,
But
okay.
really, I would say that's sort of situational dependent on what's baby's demeanor.
Yeah, yeah.
Are they arching their back and crying? That's one thing. Are they arching their back in playtime? That's another thing.
Yeah, yeah. But either way, it'd probably be great to well, I would think again, if I was having more children, which I am not, but because when my children were young, again, this is something I didn't realize could be helpful. Um, but yeah, just getting kind of an overview. It sounds like it would just be so helpful. And a lot of insurance companies, I hope, are cover a lot of these appointments too. So it'd just be kind of helpful as another check-in in addition to somebody's healthcare practitioner, because we know they're great for the medical stuff, but it sounds like this is a wonderful, I don't want to call it alternative health. It's like in addition to
Complementary.
complementary. Thank you. That's the
Complementary
word.
health. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I agree. I mean, I would love to see a lot of times, if I see a baby and the issue is gas or like a fussiness,
Uh-huh.
then I'm working with mom on how is the baby eating. If we're getting into a bigger conversation that's like, okay, well, what mom when mom is breastfeeding, what mom eats, baby eats, are we concerned about any sort of food that's causing this sort of gas? Then
Mm.
at that point, I'm probably referring off to a naturopathic doctor. So I have like a bunch of different people I'll send adults and babies to. I think it's really important to have a whole team in place.
Mhm. Mhm.
But then when I see older babies or even newborns who there's no problem, they eat well, they burp well, a lot of times what I'm seeing isn't stuff the parents pick up on. And then, I was a parent, my kids didn't go to osteopathy until they were much older. So, you look back and think, oh gosh, if I
If
had known,
only.
I would
Yeah.
have taken them,
Yeah.
but we see, so a lot of times you'll see babies who don't like to lift one arm, who are only reaching with one arm.
Mm.
So we want to watch for that. We want both arms to be coming up. They're playing in addition to the midline, which is kind of what I'm looking for specifically. But if a baby laying on their belly is always supermaning, like always arms up, legs up, or like the swim if they're younger than six
After a
months,
particular age, right? Because they might just
younger
do
than
that.
yeah. So they may, when they're getting ready to crawl, they may start to do that a little bit.
Okay.
If your baby is always moving, always moving, bring them in. That's actually a good indication that they could use a treatment. If your
Really?
baby is, yeah, if your baby's never moving, if you're like, oh my gosh, he's so chill, which chill
Huh.
babies are great,
Yeah. We're
right?
like, don't,
But
yeah.
but if they're not really interested,
There
then
could be a
that
reason. There could be a
yeah,
reason.
that there could be a reason, and not holistically. I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, of course.
Um, and otherwise, I would say, like with the exception of car seats and high chairs, which are necessary for safety,
Mhm.
keep as much as possible, keep the baby out of a swing or a bouncy seat or a jolly jumper. Like, if you have other kids in the house or there's pets and you need to take a shower or you are making supper, then obviously keep the baby safe. But
Yeah.
outside of those situations, it's really the best thing for baby. Because again, if they're in a chair, aside from, the situations I just mentioned, if they're in a chair or a bouncy chair, their relationship with the ground, it's different.
Mm.
That's not
Mm.
their position on the ground. And so we really want babies to be in free play, if you will, as much as possible. And then, some moms are like, well, my baby doesn't like to be put down. And it's like, that's okay. They will eventually.
Yeah.
If they can
Yeah.
get a little bit of time on their back and a little bit of time on their bellies every day, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to look like a certain amount of time. Like some babies want to be held more than others. It's,
Totally.
they'll grow. That does change as they become, more stable.
Yeah. And you're not saying that like you said, you can't not ever use the jolly jumper, the seats or the swings, but like they're necessary sometimes and just
Yeah,
helpful. But more often than not, trying to have the free play or on the floor or with a parent instead of always
absolutely.
being
And
in
like
those.
maybe let's scrap the jelly jumpers completely. But the
Okay.
vibrating chairs and swings, those are, you have to keep baby safe when you're going to take a shower or
What do
the
we not like
dog's
about the
there. Or,
jolly jumpers? Is this
so
the
what
way their hips are in relation
it's
to
it's the hips, and also it's how it teaches them to come into contact with their foot. They're not ready to come into contact with the ground with their foot. And also the foot doesn't land on the floor in the same way as when
right.
they are standing or walking.
Okay, so what can it do if you're in a jolly jumper a lot
So
or they like it or
what it's gonna do is it can result in what osteopathically you could call a dysfunctional gait. So a gait is how you walk.
right,
All right,
right.
this is not like scare tactic. I'm not anti Jolly Jumper. My kids use Jolly Jumpers.
Mine
They're
did
fine.
too,
They're
and I had
fine.
no idea
They're
about
fine.
this.
They're fine human beings. They've turned out
Yeah.
wonderfully so far. They've made it to high
No, but
school,
this is
right?
worthy of a conversation in case someone's maybe is like, "Oh, my baby loves a jolly jumper, so they're
Yeah.
in it like hours a day or whatever." Like,
My younger
yeah.
gal, she loved the Jolly Jumper. She loved it. And so I put her in it. But
Why not? Yeah.
yeah, and now she's 16 and she's a wonderful human being. Like I say, there's no like, oh my gosh, big
And she
horrible
doesn't
thing
have
has
a weird
happened.
like bow-legged walk kind of thing.
Not at
She's
all.
good. She's good. Okay,
Not
great.
at all. She's a dancer. She's lovely.
Okay, great. Okay,
Yeah.
so but going back to that, they're
But
hitting
going back, yeah. So just
yeah.
to kind of keep things in perspective, this isn't, I'm not
Yeah.
fear mongering the bouncies.
Of
But
course.
what it does is it sets their hips at a different angle than where they sit naturally because the seat, like, so then I would say
Yes.
exerciser is the same thing, not to, so exerciser or jolly dumper, anything that's propping babies vertically before baby can independently be vertical.
Oh,
Right? So
what a
in a jolly jumper, if baby can't sit or stand, they're propped up vertical in the
yeah.
jolly jumper. And same with the exercisers.
But their body's not necessarily
But
ready
their
to
body
do
doesn't
that.
have the musculature to do that. So,
So they're
my,
yeah.
my other girl, my older gal, I put her in the exerciser before she could even sit because she loved
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, because it could be
So anyway,
upright and they could play, but not necessarily the best. Like so, this makes me think of bumbo chairs. You know those, right?
oh,
Yeah. So
I
that
know.
really is something created so that the really little babies can sit up. But
Yeah.
what would that be doing to what like their spine or
So,
like
so
it's
it's
compressing
creating
everything?
no, it's creating a different development of musculature. So so if baby's on their belly and have their hands on the ground and their knees on the ground, or even they're getting into hands and knees or like with one foot under them, that's called closed chain kinetic activity. So it means
Okay.
the one piece, like the hand, for example, is in contact with the ground.
Hmm.
That's the closed part of the chain. The chain is the arm.
Okay. Okay.
So the hand is in contact with the arm, and then as baby starts to press on the arm, whether it's their weight bearing on the elbow, eventually their weight bearing on the hand, that's developing the musculature in the shoulder joint
Okay.
the way it needs to be. And then
Okay.
same with the hips. So again, another ball and socket joint. So when they're coming into, at 3 months, we mentioned they're laying on their bellies, they have their elbows the
Down.
inside of their elbows in
Touching.
contact with the ground, and then it's the base of the sternum. Eventually it becomes their pelvis is in contact with the ground. Eventually they're, tucking their knees, they're getting up onto hands and knees, all four, rocking, that whole
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so what that's doing is, as the hands and then the knees and then the feet, it's developing the bigger joints, so shoulders and hips. It's developing them to be stable, to
Mm.
weight bear the
Mm.
human being that's now,
Mm-hmm.
little, but won't always
Mm-hmm.
be. And
Mm-hmm.
so then you get them into a propped seat, so bumbo chair. So I'm going to add that to the list. Bumbo
Yeah.
chair, exercise, or jolly jumper. Then they're not weight bearing in a
The,
natural way. It's in a
right.
contrived way.
Okay. Okay. So can we, just for a hot second before we wrap things up, try to problem solve this outside of maybe saying I'm just thinking of somebody listening to this, and if this person was me a few years ago and I had my kids in the jolly jumper and the
Yeah.
exerciser, which we called the circle of neglect, lovingly so,
Oh yeah,
lovingly so, um,
that's good.
and we use those, and so I'm
Yeah.
thinking, okay, if I rewind a few years and I'm listening to this episode and I'm like, oh shit, like I've been
Yeah.
doing that, or my baby loves it, what do I do now? What
Yeah.
what
And
what
so,
should they think about going forward?
yeah.
Do we
So and I had a similar experience too, as I started taking this more advanced pediatric osteopathic training. I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? My poor
right?
kids.
Right.
Like, how did they survive? It's so,
Yeah, yeah.
it's never too late to change and to learn and to grow. As we know, as parents, that's like the whole journey of parenting,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
learning to be humble. Um,
But you're not telling parents to go and throw all those things out in the trash right now, right? Or maybe you are. You're saying don't ever use them ever again if you can
I'm
help it.
saying let's get rid of them. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah.
Get rid of them.
As
Let's try
far,
not to use them. Okay.
yeah, like a prop chair or a
Yeah.
swing
Yeah.
for when necessary.
Okay.
To keep baby safe is like, you're busy. If you have other kids, if there's pets, if you need to take a shower, if you're like, oh my gosh, this baby, like I just need a
Yeah.
minute,
Yeah.
for sure. Put them
But we
in
don't
there.
necessarily need the jolly jumper for that. Maybe a chair or something would be better. Would you
Yeah,
say?
like
Okay.
absolutely 100%. That's what I would say. So
Because they're at least a little more supported in
they're a little
those.
more supported, and they're not going to stay in there as long. And it's like, I understand this is difficult. Like,
Yeah.
some babies are, everyone has a different experience in raising their babies, and every baby is different. So it's like, what's the personality of your baby? And then also, what's mom dealing with? What's home life like?
Well,
How is
that's what
she
I was going to
feeling?
say.
What
I was
is
going
her
to say,
emotional state, right? Like, I'm
it,
not into, in any way, shape, or form, shaming. I'm like incredibly supportive. The people I see in my office with their babies, those babies are so deeply loved and so well cared for. It's
mm,
like, moms, you're doing a
that's
great
number
job.
one.
And
That's
if
number
you're
one.
listening to this podcast, you're doing an amazing job. Like, to love and care for your baby. What more
Yeah.
could anyone ask for?
Well, exactly. I think anybody listening, it's because they care and they want to do the best
Absolutely.
they can. And we're not going to do it all right. Not everyone is going to throw out their jolly jumpers after this. I know
Yeah,
that.
me too.
And that's okay.
I probably wouldn't have thrown out mine. In all honesty, I probably
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
have
would have
thrown out
been
my
like,
jolly
what the
jumper. Yeah.
hell? Hopefully they're still listening.
She was my second. I had a 2-year-old. Like, you gotta
Honestly. Yeah.
survive too.
Yeah.
Um,
But
but
like you said,
that said,
I love that you brought up the part about like what are the other factors, because like if a parent's mental health is like I need to be able to put
absolutely.
my baby in these things, great, do it, but maybe be mindful that it's not like all afternoon or
Yeah,
whatever.
or maybe, if baby likes Jolly Jumper or their exerciser, um, maybe if you need a break, if baby likes it, go onto the swing for a little bit, and introduce a play mat. Like, get the baby familiar with being put
Mm.
down as well. The baby
Mhm.
familiar with, okay, it's playtime on my back and there's interesting things above me.
Mm. Okay. So good. Yeah, we can just change up the play a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
Move
Yeah,
the
no,
needle in that
yeah,
direction. I love that. Great.
yeah, kind of
Awesome.
more free play, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Well, this has been extremely informative, Kaitlyn. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you feel like in this realm would be worth sharing? We really covered some great ground here, just in terms of like what is osteopathy and who you're seeing and what that those things maybe can help with. So yeah, is there anything else that you feel like we didn't touch on that might be worth sharing?
A few books that I do recommend if I see someone prenatally There's it's called The Mother of All Pregnancy Books by Anne Douglas. She's a
Okay.
Canadian author, so I really like the Canadian perspective. The
Mm-hmm.
healthcare system has changed significantly since she wrote the book, so I'm not sure about, some information she may have about getting into a doctor or whatever. It may now be different. And then she also has the Mother of All Baby books. It's the first year. I
Okay.
think they do continue. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure there's a toddler book as well. I'm not sure how far she goes up. Um, and then also the book I mentioned before, Why Birth Trauma Matters by Emma Svanberg, and Why Breastfeeding, Grief, and Trauma Matter by Amy
Mm.
Brown. So, in regards to breastfeeding, I'm happy that babies are loved and cared for and well fed. I feel sad when mom wanted to breastfeed
Mm.
and through a lack of support,
Mm-hmm.
she wasn't able to. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really sad for me. So I'd really encourage anyone who's listening who's either has a new baby or is expecting a new baby to please seek out breastfeeding support and education, to please seek out birth classes in education. Like, we really need to take this into our own hands
Mm-hmm.
and support the community of individuals giving birth. And I don't have the statistics or the data on hand, but education on breastfeeding, education on childbirth, it leads to safer births. It leads to breastfeeding success.
More
If
confidence, all
more
the things.
confidence. So all
Yeah.
of that's really important to
Yeah.
educate ourselves. Um, Learn, how does the breast work? How does the breast create milk? What happens? What causes the milk letdown? What does a baby's mouth supposed to look like? How does their tongue move? Learn about breastfeeding. So at least going in, you can think, okay, I think this is how it's supposed to work. And know that, especially if it's the first baby or the first baby that you've breastfed, know the timeline. When can I expect that my milk's going to be in? Like myself personally, my first daughter, I was had the gift actually of working with midwives through my pregnancy. It was beautiful
Mm.
care, and they that was part of the care that they provided, was so much breastfeeding education. And if it weren't for them, and my mom was a labor and delivery nurse a long time, so she was
Woo,
really
you had
supportive. As
support.
oh
You
yeah, it was
had the
what
support.
it was wonderful. So, but without the
Amazing.
education, we don't know. Like, oh my God, baby's really hungry, and she's 2.5 days old, and all she wants to do is eat. She's not getting enough.
But my milk hasn't fully
But
come
my
in.
milk hasn't
And
come in, right? And like,
yeah,
oh my gosh, I'm really
yeah,
hungry. And they sent us home with this bottle of formula from the
yeah,
hospital. So I think,
yeah.
so and I'm not biased towards breast or bottle. That's an individual choice for the family. I just want people who want to breastfeed to
Yeah.
have the education and the support, the knowledge and the support,
Mm.
so that they can be successful at that. And
Thousand
same as
percent.
birth, however you
Yeah.
want to do it, whatever your thoughts are on it, just have the
Learn some
knowledge,
stuff. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
learn, like, what is the process of birth, like
Yeah.
what
Yeah. You're
happens.
speaking my language, Kaitlyn,
Yeah, I
because
know. And
we teach prenatal classes,
I know,
but
I love it, Ashley. It's so needed.
it
It's
is. And
so
we actually
needed.
just had our feeding class last night. And that's exactly what we talk about. It's like, if you don't have a heads up on certain things when it comes to
Yeah.
breastfeeding in the early days and hours before all the milk comes in, you're going to worry and it's going to be stressful. So just learning about it, step number one. If,
Yeah,
like you said, if that's your goal, if that's what you're
if
looking to
that's
do.
your goal, and if that's what
Yeah.
you want to do, then set yourself up so that that you will be able to do it, because there will be days and nights, it's always nights, that you're really questioning, like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, thank you so much, Kaitlyn. This has been really helpful. I hope more people come out to see you, osteopaths, just get that experience of learning more about themselves and their babies, whether it's in pregnancy, postpartum, that early childhood years. It sounds like there's a lot of little intricacies that you can look at, but very holistically. And like you said, where your boundaries lie, and you can refer out if other things are necessary. So
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
an
it's
awesome
great.
support.
It's great for everyone, whether they come to see me. I'd love to see them. And then there's a lot of osteopaths through HRM. So
Yeah.
find, but
Or
give
wherever
yourself,
people are listening.
or
I know there's
wherever
listeners elsewhere too, but
you're
yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
and set yourself up with a care team for you and
Yeah.
for your baby.
Awesome. Such great advice. Thanks so much, Kaitlyn. I hope to talk to you again soon.
It was so nice to talk to you, Ashley.
If you're looking for more information or support along your parenting journey, check out birthbabysleep.ca. That's where you're going to find prenatal classes, postpartum and new baby resources, and sleep support during the childhood years. Lastly, but certainly not least, if you got something out of this episode or our show in general, leaving a rating or a quick review goes a really long way to helping others find us. So please consider leaving one. That's all for now. I'm Ashley Cooley, and we'll see you back here next time.